Hello and welcome to Let's Replay. I'm joined today by regular Eurogamer contributor and award-winning video games journalist Simon Parkin. Hello Simon.
Hi there Ellie.
Now what are we playing today?
Today we are playing Final Fantasy VII, which viewers will be interested to learn is the 7th game in the Final Fantasy series.
That's award-winning journalism right there. That's it.
It was released in 1997, I think January 97 in Japan, and it made its way to Europe in November of that year for Sony's first PlayStation.
Now I do remember, I didn't play this a lot, I'm going to be honest, but I do remember a lot, like it was a big deal when it came out, wasn't it? Like it was the game. Yeah,
so this was the first 3D game in Squaresoft's, as they were called at the time. Now, of course, they're called Square Enix after a merger with Enix, but it was the first 3D game in the Final Fantasy series, and it was something of a showcase for the PlayStation's kind of cinematic capability. So that's why it kind of became very well known. Although anecdotally, it was supposedly the most returned game of the PlayStation era in the UK.
Really, what returns just because people didn't like it?
Yeah, I think people thought they were, buying some kind of amazing movie game, and then were like, "What's this kind of potions?"
This is just an animated studio line advert, basically.
Yeah, but of course, it did find a huge following, and I think it was probably the game that broke the Japanese RPG out into the mainstream, certainly in terms of sales and also in people kind of knowing about the genre.
Cool, let's press on.
Okay, so it doesn't really have a title screen. You just kind of get thrown into this loading area, and I thought we'd play right from the start. It's a game that opens with a bang, perhaps more than many of the other games in the Final Fantasy series. So we start off in the midst of a terrorist attack.
Oh, that's jolly. That's...
Yep.
Yeah, I remember the fact that it came on multiple discs being like a selling point. Like I remember that being super exciting and everyone being like, "Wow, this game is so big and so." Nowadays, kids today wouldn't stand for that.
No, they wouldn't.
You know what I mean? Although the GTA's on 2 discs, isn't it? But don't you install it and then it's...
Yeah, and I think a lot of that is down to the amount of... At the time, we called it FMV, which stood for full motion video, and that's kind of a phrase that we've kind of dropped from the game's lexicon. But it's stuffed with, I think it's about 40 minutes of cutscenes that were pre-rendered videos, so that's why it came on so many discs.
Oh. Have you completed this?
Yes, I have, yeah.
How long is the full-on?
Oh, geez, I can't remember. I completed it at the time and probably spent about 70 or 80 hours playing that.
Gosh, yeah.
So this is the kind of very well-known introduction sequence that Square Enix remade around the time of PlayStation 3 came out to show off the power of the PlayStation 3, and I think that got people very excited, thinking there was going to be a Final Fantasy VII remake, which is yet to surface.
Can you give us some insider knowledge? You sound like there's more to say there.
Well, no, I mean, they're steadily working their way through remaking the Final Fantasy games, and so I'm sure it will inevitably happen at some point if Square Enix continues trading, which hopefully they will. But it's obviously a much more ambitious game to have to remake. So the city that we can see here is Midgar, which is the capital city of the world, the game world. And it's the headquarters of the Shinra Electric Company, which doubles as the ruling government in this world.
Yeah, it's all coming back. I do remember the train and the little red dudes, and I remember you get this amazing sort of vista of this very detailed, and then you go down and it's just more Lego people, isn't it, basically? Yeah. Just a video game.
But definitely at the time it was like, oh wow, this is the future, this is what all games will be like. And
actually, if you look at Minecraft, not forever.
Yeah. So this guy here with the spiky hair is of course Cloud Strife. He is a mercenary who's been hired by the other guy who's running off into the distance, who is Barret. He's been hired by him to take part in this terrorist attack. So if you check the soldier's body, you get a potion, and then we're going to run off here. And these are some of Shinra's soldier dudes who are coming to stop us, and this is kind of how it's going to show us the basics of battle, which are of course based on the most earliest, the very earliest role-playing games which all kind of look like this sort of line dancing setup.
Yeah, with a massive sword. That's it. If only Shania Twain had one of those, how different history might have been. So what was sort of going on in your life at the time that meant you could devote 80 hours to playing this video game?
Right, I was a student.
Right, yeah, that'll do it.
Yeah, so I previously owned Sega consoles, and so this was my first Final Fantasy game on a console. I bought a PlayStation to play Metal Gear Solid, and bought this around the time it came out, and it was like nothing else I'd played really.
So you went into JRPGs before this, because you're quite into them now, aren't you? You've played a lot.
Yeah, yes, I kind of played a few on Game Boy and things like that, but yeah, it was really retroactively after playing this game that I really kind of went back and played through each of the Final Fantasies. So this guy here, Biggs, Final Fantasy, each game in the series is set in a completely different reality, but they kind of have these motifs that repeat, and Biggs and Wedge are two kind of secondary characters that appear in every Final Fantasy game, I think, and they're named after the wingmen from Star Wars. I think when Luke Skywalker flies down the tunnel to blow up things, his wingmen are Biggs and Wedge, and I think Sakaguchi, who invented Final Fantasy, was a big Star Wars fan, and so that's how they made it in.
It's good he was a fan of Star Wars, because if you'd been a fan of, I don't know, the Carry On films, these games would have been quite different. Yeah, as I said, I didn't play. Yeah, that's right. This is Hattie Jakes. I didn't play this one that much. The one I got into, I think it was 9, and it was the one with like airships, and it had like the little character that looked like Orko out of He-Man in it.
Right.
Which I don't even know which number it was. That's the only thing I can really remember, because I just remember playing it and thinking, surely they're going to get sued by Mattel. Yeah. How can they get away with this? But I like that one because it was quite sort of rustic, and it had that sort of more traditional fantasy charm. I couldn't really get into this whole sort of industrial. This just reminds me of the industrial zone in the Crystal Maze, to be quite honest with you.
Ed Tudor-Pole is a hidden character.
Keep expecting Richard O'Brien to pop out from behind the TV and just go, wow, yeah. But is this a sort of thing? Are you quite into this sort of industrial look? Yeah,
well, this was the first kind of steampunk. Oh no, it wasn't actually. Final Fantasy VI was also a steampunk Final Fantasy, and then Final Fantasy IX was the sort of return to the knights and castles that had defined the early era kind of Dungeons and Dragons style games. But yeah, I mean, this kind of steampunk look was hot stuff in '97.
Yeah, absolutely. When you look at it compared to, I know, as you say, the Final Fantasy games are all set in kind of different realms, and each has a different style and look, and you know, but I guess, do you think the series has moved on much from this game, basically?
Yes, I mean, they kind of, like I say, they've got these motifs that they kind of repeat, and they're both kind of, in terms of character names and things like chocobos, the big chickens that appear in airships, and there's always a character called Sid, but also some of the kind of basic mechanics and systems repeat and get developed each time. So as we can see in this battle scene, you can see I have to wait for the time gauge to fill up. This is part of Square's active time battle system, which was something of an innovation when it debuted in, I think, Final Fantasy IV, and that's something that still appears in all of the Final Fantasy games. Certainly in Final Fantasy XIII Lightning Returns, which is about to launch in a week or so, you can see all of that DNA still remains.
Have you played the new one?
Yes, I am in fact reviewing it for Eurogamer.
Oh, yeah, well, that would do it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, when you play that game, do you get the same sort of feeling you had when you were playing Final Fantasy VII back in the day?
I mean, it's difficult, isn't it? Because when you play a game when you're 18 or 19 and you know, it's new, it's maybe a new thing. Certainly with this game, it was doing a lot of things that video games hadn't done before, certainly in terms of the visuals and graphics, these pre-rendered backgrounds with 3D characters laid on top. It was all exciting in the future, and those kind of things happen a lot less these days, not just because, you know, we're older, but also because, you know, those kind of inventions are harder to come by, I think.
What I'm really saying is, was it better in the good old days?
I mean, I think this game's pretty amazing, and it holds up, I think. And in certain key ways, I certainly think the storytelling is a lot better in this game than it is in the Final Fantasy 13 trilogy, where I think all these early games were written by Sakaguchi, who was the director, and he departed the company in something of a storm of controversy after they launched the Final Fantasy The Spirits Within movie, which was a complete box office flop, and he left somewhat disgraced. And I think they've struggled since then to really kind of tell the same kind of evocative stories that they managed back then.
Well, one of the big moments, the famous moments in this story. Now, this is a spoiler alert. If you intend to play this game and you haven't played it, maybe stop watching now. The moment I'm talking about, of course, is Aeris's death. Simon Parkin,
right.
Did you cry? I think you've just answered the question.
No, I didn't. I was just thinking about a joke that I probably shouldn't make there. No, I didn't cry, but it was an effective moment because it was so surprising. You know, killing off a big character in any kind of fiction is always a surprise, and in video games it hadn't really happened at that point. So I think that's why it had such an effect.
Did you love her a little bit?
She's an engaging character.
She's an engaging character.
Right, okay, wait, so this is interesting, right? So you look at this character Aeris, who you meet probably slightly after we're going to finish this this kind of Let's Replay, but you invest a lot in her, so you take her around in your group, and I love this bit, by the way. So Barret, the character there, who's a bit like B.A. Baracus, does a little aside to the camera, a bit like Miranda.
Final Fantasy is like Miranda in so many ways. I've often thought that. Yeah.
No, right. So you've invested a lot in this character, in terms of your time, but also you've maybe been nurturing her and leveling her up, and so to have that taken away from you is super annoying. And you're so not only in terms of the fiction are you annoyed by that because you know this character that you care about has died, but also this character that you've spent a lot of time leveling up and equipping with different going around the world finding better shoes for and swords and all of that stuff gets taken away. And so I think that's another reason why it's quite effective.
So really you're saying you didn't have any emotional attachment to the character, you just invested quite a lot of energy in
I just wanted her for what she gave me.
You're just a machine. Your cold heart, Simon Parkin.
I view women like resources, Ellie.
That's right, you asked me to borrow a tenner just before we started recording. Well, thank you very much, Simon Parkin, for showing us Final Fantasy VII.
No worries, thanks for having me.
Do you fancy coming back to show us 8, 9, 10, 11 and on for the rest of your life?
Yeah, I think that's what I've signed up to, right?
Yeah, absolutely. All right, thanks for watching. Bye.
Bye.